Hello children, today we will start with a new chapter, The Open Window, from the book Mulberry of class 7th. Hello children, today we will learn about the new chapter, The Open Window. But before that, please like, subscribe and share my channel. Thank you. The chapter starts with, which of the following words means a practical joke? Plank, clank, prank or crank? So the answer is prank. P-R-A-N-K, prank. Now let's begin the story. My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall, said a very confident and well-mannered young lady of 15. In the meantime, I will keep you company. These lines suggest that a 15-year-old girl who seemed confident and polite told Mr. Nuttall that her aunt would come downstairs soon. Until then, she would stay with him and talk to him. The next paragraph starts. Frampton Nuttall tried to say the correct thing in reply. He had come to the countryside to give his nerves a rest, but this visit to the house of total strangers was making him feel quite ill at ease. So, the meaning of these lines are that Frampton Nuttall wanted to respond politely. He had come to the village to relax and calm his mind. Calm his nerves means to calm his mind. But meeting and talking to strangers in this house was making him feel uncomfortable. Now the further line says, I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to spend a few completely quiet days in countryside. You will bury yourself down there and not speak a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from mopping. I shall give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. So these lines says that before the trip, his sister had warned him that if he went to the countryside and stayed alone without talking to anyone, he would feel even worse and more depressed. So her sister said that she would be writing some introduction letters for him, so he could meet people she knew in the village. She remembered some of them were quite friendly to her. Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sappleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into the category of the nice ones. Means that since Frampton has come to the countryside, right? So he was wondering whether if Mrs. Sappleton, the lady he came to meet using his sister's introduction letter, was one of the nice person his sister has mentioned. Frampton and the niece sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, do you know many of people round there? Means that Frampton and that girl who was talking to Frampton, that was Sappleton's niece, was sitting quietly for some time. Then the girl asked him if he knew many people in this area. Now to which Frampton replied, hardly a soul. My sister was staying here some 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. Your aunt is one of them. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt, inquired the young lady. Only her name and address, admitted Frampton. Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago, said the girl. That would be after your sister left. Means that Frampton said, I hardly know anyone here. He explained that his sister had lived here around for 4 years ago and gave him letters of introduction so that he could meet few people over there. Okay, and Mrs. Appleton was one of them. The girl said, "So you know almost nothing about her aunt?" And to which Frampton says that he only know the name and the address. The girl said something sad happened to her aunt 3 years ago, which was after Frampton's sister had already left the area, so he wouldn't know about it. Her tragedy? Asked Frampton. Somehow in the restful country spot, tragedy seems out of place. Means that Frampton was so surprised and asked her which tragedy was she talking about. He found it hard to believe that something sad could happen in such a quiet and a peaceful village. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece, pointing to a large French window that opened on to a lawn. The girl pointed to the big window that opened towards the garden and said, "You might be thinking why we leave that window open on cold October afternoon." The further Frampton is asking, does this window has got anything to do with the tragedy? Out through that window 3 years ago to a day, my aunt's husband and her 2 young brothers went off for a day of fishing. They never came back. In crossing the wasteland to their favorite fishing ground, all 3 of them got sucked into a bog. Means she told Frampton that exactly 3 years ago, her aunt's husband and her 2 younger brothers went out for fishing through that window and they never returned back. While walking through the wet marshy land called the moor or to their favorite hunting spot, all 3 of them fell into a bog. And bog, what is the meaning of bog here? Bog means a soft, muddy area in which they got stuck and they sunk into that mud. The further story says it had rained very heavily that summer and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. So she says that summer had been very rainy and wet. Because of that, places which used to be safe earlier became dangerous and unstable without any warning. And the worst part, she said, was that their dead bodies were never found. Here, the niece's voice lost its calm tone and became hushed and hesitant. Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday and their little brown spaniel that was lost with them and walk in at that window just as they used to. So at this point, the girl's confident voice changed and became shaky and emotional, like a real sad person talking about something painful. She said her aunt still believed that one day the 3 men and their little brown dog, spaniel they're talking about, would return and enter the house through that same window like they always used to come. That is why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dusk. Poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out, her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing Bertie, why do you bound? As he always did to tease her because she said the song got on her nerves. Do you know something on still quiet evening like this? I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through that window. Now she says that her aunt would often describe their last day. How her husband carried his white raincoat and how her younger brother Ronnie sang a song, Bertie, why do you bound? Just to make fun of her. Okay. Why did the niece call her aunt poor? Because her aunt had lost her husband and brothers and still believed that they would come back one day. Okay. So she broke off with a little shudder. It was relief to Frampton when the aunt bustled into the room carrying a tray with the tea set. The girl, Vera, stopped talking and slightly shivered, as if she was scared. Frampton felt relieved when the aunt came quickly into the room carrying tea. She apologized for being late in making her appearance. Means that Mrs. Appleton said sorry for coming into the room late. I hope Vera has made you comfortable, she said. She has been very interesting, said Frampton. Now she asked Frampton that if Vera had made him feel welcome and comfortable. To which Frampton replied that the Vera had told him an interesting story. I hope you don't mind the open window, said Mrs. Appleton briskly. My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always came in this way. So here, Mrs. Appleton says cheerfully that she hoped Frampton did not mind that the window is being opened. She explained that her husband and brothers are going to come back from the same window. After hunting, they are going to come back, and they usually come back through that same window. She rattled on cheerfully. She rattled on cheerfully means she kept asking happily and quickly. Okay. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible, because Frampton found everything she said very disturbing and scary, because he had just heard from Vera that men were dead, right? He was conscious that his hostess was giving him only a fragment of her attention, and her eyes were constantly straying past him to the open window and the lawn beyond. Means the Frampton noticed that Mrs. Appleton wasn't really listening to him and kept looking out of the open window and the garden, as if expecting someone. It was certainly an unfortunate incident that he should have paid his visit on his tragic anniversary. Means Frampton thought that it was a really bad coincidence. That means it was a really bad timing that he had came to visit on the same day the man had supposedly died, and it was their anniversary day. Okay. The doctors have ordered me complete rest, announced Frampton. I have been strictly told to avoid all mental excitement and physical exercises. Means Frampton told Mrs. Appleton that his doctor had advised him to rest completely and avoid anything that would make him nervous or excited. I see, said Mrs. Appleton. I see, said Mrs. Appleton, suppressing a yawn. Then she suddenly brightened into alert attention, but not to what Frampton was saying. Means that Mrs. Appleton said, I see, while trying to hide a yawn. Probably she was bored. Then she quickly became more alert and paid full attention. Here they are at last, she cried, just in time for tea, and don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes? Means Mrs. Appleton suddenly said excitedly, there they are. She meant that her husband and her brothers are back to home. She added, they are just in time for tea, and they look like they are completely covered in mud. And now this is very shocking to Mr. Frampton, because he believed that they were dead, right? So next, Frampton shivered slightly and turned towards the knees to show his sympathy. Means that Frampton shook a little out of fear or cold, and looked at Vera, trying to show he felt sorry for her. But she was staring out through the open window with a look of horror in her eyes. But Vera was looking out of the open window with a face full of shock and fear, as if she had seen something very scary. Okay? In a chill shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung around in his seat and looked in the same direction. Now Frampton felt a sudden cold fear he couldn't explain. He was so, scared now. He quickly turned around in his chair and looked where Vera was looking, towards the window. And she was looking? Towards the window. This is the part of the story where suspense becomes strong, because Frampton believed that the men were dead, but now someone says they are walking in. In the deepening twilight, 3 figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried fishing rods, and one of them was additionally burdened with white coat hung over his shoulders. A tight brown spaniel kept close at their heels. Means that as the evening was getting darker, 3 people were seen walking across the garden towards the window. All the men were holding fishing rods, and one of them was also carrying a white coat on his shoulders, and their dog was also seems to be quite tired, and they were coming towards the window. Noiselessly they neared the house, and then a young voice chanted out of the dusk. The men quietly came closer to the house, and then someone with a young voice sang something in the dim light. "I said, Bertie, why do you bound?